Buckle up, kids, because we're going on an adventure. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was, is now eaten, for none are now here, who attended my annual Lord of the Rings marathon. Today we're going on a cookie tour of Middle-earth, visiting many of the places we see in the books and movies. Our itinerary is the Shire, Rivendell, Moria, Lothlórien, Rohan, Gondor, and Mordor. The inspiration for the cookies in this video draws most heavily from the live-action movies, extended editions of course, and we've got quite a journey ahead of us, so let's get to the baking. Concerning Hobbit whole Linzer cookies, I'm using the recipe from King Arthur, the link to it is in the description below, with strawberry jam and orange marmalade left over from the Paddington Madeleines. Since I'm trying to not overload myself with baking in the days leading up to the marathon, spoiler alert, it was still too much, I'm preparing the dough a week in advance, then freezing it until I'm ready. I was 13 when Fellowship came out, I'll save you from doing the math, I'm 36, and 13-year-old Katie Sue wanted to be an elf. But as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that nothing can beat being a hobbit in the Shire. I mean, they're living the dream. I'm rolling the thawed dough out and using round cookie cutters to make the base cookies and the stone door frame, then re-rolling the scraps. A Linzer cookie was an obvious choice for hobbit hole doors as far as design goes, and the homey, simple but delicious flavors of a butter cookie and jam feel right at home in Hobbiton. I'm using a bench scraper to make the lines of the stones around the frame of the door, and I learned that it's best to do this when the dough is soft, because you're less likely to break through the dough. I'd advise making a few extra because some will break after baking despite your best efforts. After these are all baked and cooled, I'm brushing the top cookies with cocoa powder to give them a nice aged stone feel. Next I'm spreading on some jam, sandwiching them together, and a sugar pearl goes in the center for the doorknob. They turned out pretty cute, and they're a classic, delicious combo for a cozy, idyllic place. Really, whose eye wouldn't be fixed on Rivendell? Back when I saw Fellowship in the theaters, it was our first look at elven elegance, especially this guy. He just about stopped 13-year-old Katie Sue's heart. Don't worry, I've moved on since then. This is School Night Vegan's recipe for Millionaire shortbread, but with a few changes. I added some ground pecans to the shortbread dough and replaced the soy milk in the caramel with blackberry puree and added a bit of Cointreau. I also opted to leave the salt out of the caramel and put some on top instead with some gold sugar. Maybe it's mostly the visuals from the live-action movies as the elves are fading from Middle-earth, but Rivendell says autumn to me. I knew I wanted to do something with nuts, caramel, and dark fruit, warm, deep flavors that evoke a sense of elegant autumnal elvishness. I'd thought about doing Florentines, but kept coming back to the idea of Millionaire shortbread. I've really come around to caramel in the last couple of years, so I was totally on board, and I was up for the challenge of finding a good vegan recipe for this one. The original concept was to do brown butter shortbread, but I switched over to using nuts in the shortbread when I decided to make them vegan. I wasn't sure if my changes to the recipe would work out, especially with the caramel, but it turned out beautifully. The color is a nice deep purple and it sets up really well. I can definitely see myself using this recipe with other fruit purees and flavor combinations. I probably should have taken some of the flour out of the shortbread recipe and replaced it with the pecans instead of just adding them in, because I think this is the cause of the very crumbly shortbread. Tasted good, but was a mess. The pecan shortbread, blackberry caramel, chocolate, and sea salt all worked together really well to achieve that autumnal elegance after you've cleaned up the crumbs. If the mountain defeats you, we have cookies in the mines. This is Cooking Therapy's recipe for black sesame chocolate chip cookies, which uses brown butter. I used the same dry milk brown butter trick as in the Paddington Madeleines video, and no regrets. For the last few months, I've been all about putting black sesame in my coffee, and I'll admit that I really wanted an excuse to use some in another bake. The gray color and earthiness represent the mines themselves, and the toasted marshmallow on top is the result of when you delve too greedily and too deep. I had a few ideas for what the Moria cookie would be, and someday I'll make some that incorporate mithril, but I really wanted to make a cookie with toasted marshmallow, and it was either Moria or Mordor, and I already had plans for Mordor. I'm just now realizing how self-indulgent this one is. Self-indulgent, but still on theme. I'd found a recipe for more shortbread-like black sesame cookies, but ultimately went with this one. I already have a few shortbread-style cookies, and this mixes it up a little bit. The marshmallow, it turns out, isn't something I'd do again. It'd probably be pretty good if eaten right away, but I didn't try these until the next day, and the marshmallow made them super chewy in a not pleasant way. The cookie itself was very tasty, like an earthier, nuttier, more complex chocolate chip cookie. After the long dark of Moria, let's take a rest in Lothlórien with the Lady of Light. First, I'm candying some fresh sage by dipping it in egg white. I'm using pasteurized boxed egg whites, then covering it in sugar and leaving it to dry until hard, about 24 hours. I also stuck them in the oven when it was cooling down after I was done baking to help this drying process along. Now, quick aside. If you haven't heard of the 1970 John Boorman unproduced script for a Lord of the Rings movie, I highly recommend it. The video where I first heard about it and the Reddit post that has the script are in the description below. My friends and I did a table read of it, and here's where this is relevant. It's bonkers, especially the Lothlórien part. But back to the baking. This is the traditional Biscotti recipe from the King Arthur Baker's Companion. My only change to the recipe was to use lemon extract instead of anise. Anise? Anise. Lothlórien and the elves who live there have a much more ethereal quality than their Rivendell counterparts. I'm sure there's some kind of difference in the type of elves and such, something to do with Sindarin and Noldor probably, but that's getting into Nerd of the Rings territory. The Biscotti bake up a lovely golden brown for the golden malorn trees of Lórien, and then the silvery white celadon colors that are prevalent in the movie are represented by the white chocolate covered in the candied sage. I'm chopping that now candied sage up fine, then sprinkling it over the white chocolate before it sets. The almond and sage are a nice combination, both of them being rather elegant flavors in my opinion, and I think the visual effect is quite nice. The candied sage also gives it a wonderful, delicate crunch. You know, I try to not have the courtesy of my hall lesson of late, which is why we're on cookie number 5 of 7, which are Scientifically Sweet's matcha chocolate chip cookies. I swapped the chocolate chips out for white chips and rolled them in some gold sugar before baking to evoke the banners of Rohan. If for some reason I couldn't live in the Shire, I think I'd live out my horse girl dreams in Rohan. Some of my favorite moments in the movies comes from the Rohirrim. If you're not crying at this point, then you need to wake up. I'm also making this dough about a week ahead of time, so I'm freezing it, then letting it thaw slightly before rolling it in gold sugar, which I should have foreseen as messy, but didn't. Another quick aside, I really liked the ABC series Gallivant, except for when they spoofed this scene. Some things we do not touch. I wanted to have the green, gold, and white of Rohan's main banner, and the matcha not only brings the bulk of the green color, I did add a bit of food coloring, but it has that kind of vegetal tea flavor that says grasslands for grazing our horses to me. I left mine in the oven for just a bit too long, and the white chips started to caramelize a little, but maybe that just adds more gold to the color scheme. I really liked these. The matcha flavor was great, and they're a really nice, simple cookie. Gondor, descendant of Numenor, bulwark of the West, a land of decaying glory, calling you home with the clear ringing of silver trumpets. This kind of old sophistication says Earl Grey hot to me, but don't you think that I didn't consider doing something tomato flavored. Now, because I'm an American heathen, I usually like my Earl Grey with milk, but we'll try to be a little more cultured today and just add some lemon to these cookies. The recipe for Earl Grey shortbread from The Art of Baking includes a little lemon zest in the dough, then I'm rolling it in some black sugar, and a drizzle of lemon icing is going on top. Gondor was a lot harder for me to figure out what I wanted to do than the other locations. Did I want to do something black and white for the banner? Or something just white for Minas Tirith? Did I want to do something tomatoey, or save that for a specific Denethor-themed bake? I kept coming back to Earl Grey for the flavor, with the tea leaves representing the black field of the banner and the shortbread representing the white, but I then took it a step further by rolling them in black sugar. I also made this dough ahead of time, and while I'm pretty sure I could have rolled it into a log and sliced it like with the Rohan cookies, I was worried worried that it wouldn't hold up for some reason I couldn't foresee, so I rolled it out and cut them in rounds like the recipe said, then froze them. The day before the marathon, I thawed them slightly and rolled the edges of each cookie in black sanding sugar, which was more work than it needed to be. After they baked, I made a lemon icing of just some lemon juice and powdered sugar that was thick enough to pipe. I experimented with a few different designs, doing just some lines down the middle and a kind of homage to Minas Tirith before landing on a simplified rendition of the white tree and stars on the Gondorian banner. The Earl Grey flavor comes through nicely with a little pop of lemon from the icing. I was a little concerned that the tea leaves would give them a weird texture, but it didn't bother me at all. One does not simply walk into Mordor. No, here on Story Breaks, we bake Mount Doom into questionably representative cookies. These are the red velvet kiss cookies from Sally's Baking Addiction, with, of course, a few modifications. Instead of the sugar, these are getting rolled in black cocoa powder, and then the kiss is replaced by some dark ganache with strawberry jam. Once again, I'm making the dough in advance and freezing it. I'd gone back and forth on whether or not to add a spicy or smoky element to these cookies, either with smoky lapsang souchong tea or cayenne or gochugaru, but opted to go more for the visuals on this one. Partly this was due to the fact of having several people over for the marathon and wanting the flavors to appeal to more of them. I'm just using a cookie scoop to measure it out, then rolling it into balls before freezing. Instead of the powdered sugar, I'm rolling these in black cocoa, which I was hoping would have the effect of seeing lava peek out in the cracks of the blackened earth, and I think it worked out pretty well. I'd also thought about using kisses for the mountain, but I haven't tried the cherry-filled ones before, and I wanted them to have a red filling like the lava of Mount Doom. I finally decided on going with ganache filled with strawberry jam, which I think I could have gotten to look better if I'd taken more time. I was getting a little tired and a little rushed at the end. There's no doubt in my mind that this tastes better than a Hershey's Kiss though. I had some trouble with the ganache splitting, and I think this was due to getting my cream too hot and also not using higher quality chocolate. I used a stick blender to get it to come back together, but it wasn't the smoothest. I also ran out of time and piped it when it wasn't firm enough, so my mountains looked more like flowers. They still tasted great. The black cocoa upped the chocolatey intensity, though it did make them a little messy. We did it! 7 cookies for 7 locations in Middle-earth. The marathon is always a blast, and having these cookies was really fun. Next time, I certainly won't do so many because it was a ton of work and I was very tired, but I'll be doing more Lord of the Rings bakes for sure. I've been trying to learn the lesson of don't try to do too much and don't rush with these videos, with varying success. Hit the like button if you want to see more Lord of the Rings bakes, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're so inclined, and let me know in the comments what characters, shows, or movies I should turn into bakes next. Thanks for watching!